you're gonna break into. Up on you.
Talking Boxing with Billy C. It began as a podcast, went live on the net, and transformed into a full-blown empire. Across the web, on Fight Now TV, and on radio stations around the world. It's the only daily boxing talk radio show on the planet, hosted by the only guy with the balls to do it. Many have stepped into the ring. Many have tried to take the belt. And one by one, they've fallen. Another victim of the undisputed heavyweight champion of boxing talk radio. Talking Boxing with Billy C. is on now.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studio in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero. It's time for Talking About Billy C. Good morning, good day, good evening. Whenever you're listening, hope you're doing all right. Got a busy show scheduled for today, as usual. Got a busy rest of the week. And we actually are starting off to have it busy next week as I look into my crystal ball. But first, the show's being brought to you in part by Camp and Aaron Tomkovich. If you're looking for a lawyer, use the ones that keep my ass out of trouble. That is Camp and Aaron Tomkovich. Give them a call today, 845-221-4099. 845-221-4099. Let Camp and Aaron Tomkovich knock out your legal problem. 845-221-4099. The show's also being brought to you in part by my friends down at the Halftime Bar and Grill, Route 9, South Glens Falls. Hey, man, if you like cool people to hang with, if you like drink specials all the time, if you like live entertainment on Friday and Saturday nights, and if you love to stuff your face with great food, then you're going to love the Halftime Bar and Grill in South Glens Falls on Route 9. Give them a call for directions or to make a reservation, 518-792-4869, 518-792-4869. And the show is also being brought to you in part by Ringside.com. That's right. Ringside.com is the official boxing equipment supplier of the Talking Boxing with Billy C. show. This week we got, in addition to their normal great deals, and also don't forget to mention Billy C. Demand, a Billy C. discount when you place an order. They got free shipping, free standard ground shipping. So that I think that's good until Monday. So, hey, you know, if you're always waiting around to get the extra deal, now's the time at Ringside.com. And as usual, for all you gym owners or trainers or anyone else who orders boxing equipment in bulk, make sure you drop me an email, Billy at TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com, and I'll get you even a bigger and better discount at ringside.com. Coming up a little later on the show, we got Scotty Krause. Yeah, Scott's coming on, and Scott and I are gonna continue our greatest fight series with at least during the time it was considered one of the greatest fights ever, and it was the Carmen Basilio against Sugar Ray Robinson back in 1957, September 23rd. And Carmen Basilio had moved up in weight. He had already had the welterweight division title, and he was moving up in weight to fight Sugar Ray Robinson, who had already moved up and was in his comeback. A lot of people forget that when he fought that fight, that was the first one of two. When he fought that fight, he was 37 years old already. So, people like to question the greatness of Sugar Ray Robinson. Well, Scotty and I will talk about that in a little bit. We'll also talk about what took place on Saturday with the main fight, HBO's Bernard Hopkins, his win over Tavares Cloud, and where he goes from here, and also what's up with Keith Thurman one time. Then, following that, as if that wasn't enough, we got my man Alex Papali and I are going to do the blast from the past. This week, we're going to be talking about former world champion and boxing Hall of Famer Frank Klaus. So we'll talk about him, let you know about this guy. And what else we got? Joe Santoliquito, he's not coming on. He said something about not being available and stuff like that. So we're going to probably make Alex work a little extra today. We got some news. There's a fight that's taking place tomorrow. And, today. What am I talking about? There's a fight tonight that we'll talk more about tomorrow after the results. Interesting move by Gary Russell Jr. There's more talk about the Deontay Wilder and Tony the Tiger Thompson fight. We also got some news on Baby Bull. Even though we've been talking about it, it's been made official. I love these rumors that we talk about for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden it becomes official. And Derek Chisora, did they give him his license back? Well, we'll be talking about that. Not his driving license. Come on, man. Speaking of driving with Derek Chisora, he's like a real successful, high-end luxury car guy. I don't know if he owns a dealership or works at a dealership or, details the cars at the dealership. I don't know. But anyway, the poll question this week is, am I too hard on the referees, man? Am I too hard on the refs? Wires are all tangled up here. Apparently you guys don't think so. 80% say no. 20% say yeah. Go cast your vote right now. It's on the front of the BillyCBoxing.com website, as well as an updated Sony Thompson's Florida sports report. A lot on the Keith Thurman fight. Great picture she's got up there of one time. So check out her column. And my man Sivak. My man Sivak is, he's busy. He's one of the busiest writers. We got some new people that just joined the family, so check out their columns and all that happy stuff. Speaking of communication, I got Chatty Factory. He was asking me in the chat room, about those crazy refs. Those crazy refs. The two that we were talking about a couple weeks ago. He says, one of those two refs was the ref for the Nonito Donaire versus Victor Chinian fight, and he stated the fight was stated the fight with the good old let's get poppin'. Oh, okay. Well, that's on top of Donaire was a 20-1 fighter, underdog, never had lost, hit the floor, and Donaire knocked him out. Yeah, well, that's the let's get poppin' guy. He was that's Ed Claudio. So, anyway, let's start off with some emails. I wanted to tell you guys next week we got a couple of pretty interesting guests on tap scheduled to join us. First and foremost, out of Chicago, man, a undefeated cruiserweight prospect. Yeah, and you guys know how much I love the cruiserweight division. DeMar Ortiz is 7-0 with I think 5 knockouts, and this guy, his goal is to fight the toughest people, and he really means it. If you check out his record, he's got 2 undefeated fighters that he's already fought. Going up with the same records. I think at the time 5-0, something like that. Interesting stuff. We'll talk with DeMar next week. And also James Houlihan, Hot Lips' husband. No, only kidding. James Houlihan, he's in charge. He's the bigwig over at the Fighting Irishman exhibit. Now, this is an exhibit that was in New York for a while, and it's now touring. And we had talked about this, I believe, a year or so ago when we had Patrick, or maybe even 2 years now, Patrick Myler, who did the Dan Donnelly book. Remember Dan Donnelly, the bare knuckle guy? My man Alex is in the chat room. He knows who Dan Donnelly is because Dan Donnelly was an Irish champion that my man Tom Molyneux was trying to get a fight, and a pretty wild scene in a bar when Tom Molyneux and his trusted trainer call out Dan Donnelly in a bar, and the response from Dan Donnelly is just amazing. And the outcome is even more crazy, but you got to read my book to find out what happens there. But Dan Donnelly was beloved in Ireland at the time, and this guy was a wild, crazy playboy of sorts. Wild stories about him, and he ultimately died at an early age because of his lifestyle. And when he was buried, during the time in the early 1800s, during the time, actually this was probably mid 1800s, doctors were not allowed to practice medicine on cadavers that weren't given to them by what they call the state. So in other words, like a prisoner or somebody like that. So what they would do is they would pay people to rob graves, and they would take fresh dead people and check it out. What's a liver look like? This is the way it was, man. So it's not like hook the computer up and let's get a detailed MRI. I saw in the news the other day that they were scanning a mummy, and they're saying, several thousand-year-old mummy. And they say, look, the MRI turned up that he had clogged arteries. So and he wasn't eating any processed food. Maybe all the sand he ate. I don't know. But anyway, they robbed Donnelly's grave. And the people were so outraged that they had to put it back. But what the doctor did, he did a crazy thing. He removed the arm of Dan Donnelly. And ultimately, that arm has been passed around. It's been, mummified. And that is one of the artifacts that are part of this traveling Fighting Irishman exhibit. And we're going to talk to James Houlihan about that next week. So great stuff on tap for next week. Biggerback says, I'm a premium subscriber, Billy C. This was, I was asking him, because he had heard the show, and I didn't see that he was listening live. So he said, I'm a premium subscriber, Billy C., but I always comment on the YouTube. That's how I learned about the show, through YouTube. He says, anyway, what Golden Boy Promotions are planning with the Barclays Center is very good for boxing. To invest in a city other than Vegas will be great in the long run. I think Chicago and D.C. are underrated and underserved boxing cities, and someone should invest in them. I also see Miami as a potential player in boxing, but we know Cubans don't support their fighters. Great point, Biggerback, and I think we got to give credit where credit's due with Golden Boy. It's more than just New York, because they do have a series that's going on, not only in California, of course, and Vegas, the big shows, New York as well, but they're doing one in Florida, and they're really making some positive moves and aggressive moves towards the club show circuit, which I think is great for the sport. It's the backbone of the business. But New York is not a good place for boxing. The commission is too hard to work with, and although they work well with Golden Boy because of the, But, until the commission is fixed, I mean, and all kidding aside, I know we've been back and forth with them, but they're awful, and it's hard for promoters to make money. Golden Boy has deep pockets. So generally, the reason why you see the big shows in New York is because they're not relying on ticket sales, basically. They have other revenue streams like TV. And Golden Boys, got the deals sewed up with TV. So that's why they can afford it. But I agree, D.C. is a good spot. So is Miami. But let me tell you, Albuquerque, New Mexico is a fantastic place for boxing. It really is. It's a hotbed. There's gyms on every single corner. I mean, really, there's a gym on every corner. There's a lot of fighters. The commission's easy to work with. I mean, they're good, but they're within reason. And boxing could do very well in Albuquerque. It does very well right now, but I think it could do even better. So I agree with Big Back. I'm not taking a break for all the radio stations that are looking to take a break right now. I'm not going to take a break. I'm going to read these emails now, and then we got Scotty on deck. So don't panic. I'm not doing a commercial. Right? I'm not taking a commercial break. I saw a comment. It's funny that these guys are premium subscribers. We had another one say the same thing. Or watch on the BillyCBoxing.com website, and then go to YouTube to put their comments in. You're better off emailing all comments to Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com, or if you want it to go on the Talk to Me Man show, email talktomeman@BillyCBoxing.com. It's better. YouTube is. I'm always so iffy with YouTube, because I got a comment on a previous show we did a couple weeks ago, and the person's like, and I'm not even wasting my time reading it. It's like, all you do is talk about commercials and this and that. What kind of show is this? Well, it's the intelligence level of some of the YouTubers that irks the hell out of me. And the only reason why I keep putting it on YouTube is because we have a good group of followers, substantial number of followers that appreciate and understand that it's a show. It's not Johnny pokes his eye with an ice pick and you get a million views. It's not that. It's designed for people that can have an attention span of more than 6 minutes. So if you're watching this clip right now on YouTube, this is a 2-hour show. So if you can't pay attention for more than 6 minutes, I suggest that you leave. And I don't mean to be, a nasty boy about that, but Kieran says, heard some interesting news about a fight that has gone unnoticed by many, even here in the UK, but it was on a free webcast, so I tuned in. Curtis Woodhouse had a fight that everyone thought he won by a long way, but he lost the decision. And he says what makes this more interesting, though, is the betting on this fight was suspended just before the fight because of irregular betting patterns. He says now this show was about as small scale as it gets, and for once it actually could be gambling, corruption, crazy stuff. Now this is a follow up to what he had said about. He had made a really good point last week that we talked more about the level of corruption in the sport of boxing. And last week's poll question was, do you think boxing is corrupt? 100% of you that voted said, yeah. Not one person voted for no. And he made a point that I agreed with about the corruption is beyond gambling. Gambling for boxing was huge back in the day, but not so much now because the odds are whacked out. That's here in the States. In England, obviously, gambling is still very much a part of all sports, especially boxing. And, it's interesting to see that fight was pulled because of irregular betting pattern. And then to see that a fight that most people in attendance felt and people that watched felt that Woodhouse won, and to see him lose, you could see that the bookies knew what was going on. If you think Curtis Woodhouse is a name that you kind of remember and can recall somewhere, that's the guy. That's the tweeter, man. That's the guy who tracked down what they call a tweeting troll. No, a tweeting troll. It's like a tweetheart. I hurt my tooth. But anyway, that's who went after this guy after that fight. And subsequently, apparently, I'm curious to see what the BBBSC is going to do with him since they came down so hard on Tyson Fury with his Twitter account. But a lot of other sports people in England have come forth and basically patted him on the back. So, it's pretty cool, man. I love that whole thing. Kieran goes on to say, I saw an interview with Eddie Hearn, and he was basically talking about being friends with all of his fighters and treating them like clients to be served, which is the way it should be honest with you, Kieran. I mean, a promoter should treat the fighter as a client to be served. I mean, that's the deal, right? He says, in my view, he was talking like a defense lawyer. Doesn't matter if it's right, he will get them off. Or in his case, it's about what he can get them, and the rest of the sport doesn't matter. He said something along the lines of, I know which fights the fans want and which fights should happen for the sport, but should they happen for the fighters involved? My job is to make them money and move them along. Kieran says, which is true, but it's also short-sighted. If everyone keeps using this business practice, there won't be a sport left to scalp for cash and perfect routes for titles. You're right, Kieran. You have to put the two hats on. You see, it's really hard in boxing. I think it's pretty unique in this sport like no other. In NFL football and in soccer and baseball and basketball and what have you, all the other professional sports, there's a league that helps these guys make money. There's television deals that revenue gets put into a pot and it gets distributed among the league and its players and so on and so forth. Boxing's not like that. It's up to the fighters to generate their money. It's up to their promoters to generate their money. It's up to us, the fans, to put the money into the pool for them. And with that said, if when I put the boxing purist hat on, like Kieran's thinking right now, I agree. We want to see the good fights. I don't want to pay hard-earned cash for a fight that's not competitive. And even worse, I don't want to pay hard-earned cash for a fight that is competitive and then see the end result, get tainted like Curtis Woodhouse's decision was rendered this past weekend. So I get it, But then when you put your business hat on and you put your, I'm working for the fighter, I make my living working for the fighter hat on, you want to protect your interest and you want to help that fighter. Too bad there wasn't a midway, I'm okay with that fighter fighting those tune-up fights or those let me move myself along fights if they fought a couple of those during the year and a couple of good ones during the year. So in other words, if we got to see 6 fights as the norm with fighters instead of jumping for joy when they fight 3 times a year, if we saw 6 fights and, 3 or 4 of them were against these, cupcake level fighters, and then 3 or 2 or 3 of them were against, high level, very competitive fights, I'm okay with that. That was the blueprint of yesteryear. They fought a hell of a lot more often, but not every fight was a knockout, drag-out, war. So we need a happy medium. I think Kieran's point is if it all goes in one way, it's going to kill the sport, which is true. And it's impossible to all go the other way. So good point there. And we got, the last email here is Seth from Mamaroneck, New York. Mamaroneck, New York is in Westchester. So maybe, when you guys email, maybe tell me where, how you're listening from now on, some of the regulars like Kieran and stuff, I know where it's listening, but it's like Seth from Mamaroneck, that could be a Fight Now listener, and we'd love to get a gauge on Fight Now, especially with some stuff going on right now. So, Seth from Mamaroneck says, Billy C., love your show and love being a new premium subscriber. Oh, cool. We need a lot more, Seth, that's for sure. He says, who are your all-time favorite top 3 heavyweights? I want to know who your favorites are, not who you think were the best top 3. I want to know your 3 favorite heavyweights. Keep up the great work. 3 is hard. 3 is hard. When people ask me this question, I have my top. I have my top 5. I have my top 5 heavyweights. I always talk about, and it's in this order. All right. Mike Tyson's number one. Now, these are my top favorite fighters, all right, of all time. Mike Tyson is number one. The reason he's number one is similar to what we've heard Alex Papali say. This was a guy that, during my time, I mean, yes, I'm old enough to have watched Muhammad Ali and fighters like Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman the first time around, Jimmy Young, the end of Sonny Liston's career, all of that. As a kid, I watched those fights. But I didn't get into boxing as hard and as heavy, as a fan. Even though I was a regular fan of boxing, I watched those fights. But I became a real big fan of Mike Tyson. It was above boxing for me. Mike Tyson was an event every time he fought. And he's my number one. He was my number one favorite guy. Everything stopped when Mike Tyson fought for me. So he's clearly number one. I tell the story. When Mike Tyson fought Buster Douglas in Tokyo, I wasn't living in Lake George. I used to, visit Lake George on the weekends all the time. And it was in February, and they used to have a winter carnival up here, which they still do, but it was real big back in the 80s. And my kids were babies. And I remember going to the fight, and I was in a hotel room, and the kids were babies in those portable cribs or whatever. And my wife hated Mike Tyson and always prayed that he would lose, never said anything. And so I'm watching the fight, and it was like, late at night or whatever. And, she says, she's like trying to sleep or whatever, and she started watching, and it was like silent, not the normal, cheer and jump of joy after a couple of rounds, and Tyson's the winner. She's like, Tyson's not doing too good, is he? And I'm like, shut the F up. I wanted to, slit her throat. And next thing you know, he gets knocked out. And it was such the feeling that came over me was so bad that I basically turned on all the lights in the hotel room, woke the kids up, packed up everything, got in the Blazer, and said, "That's it, we're going home," and left. Our vacation was cut short, and we went back home. So that was the impact, and I never watched that fight again until the 20-year anniversary when I happened to have been in Albuquerque, New Mexico, sitting in a hotel room, flipping through the channels, and I watched it again for the first time in 20 years. So, my second favorite guy is Sonny Liston. Second favorite all-time heavyweight, Sonny Liston. I loved him. Can't get enough of Sonny Liston. Wish I got to see more of him in his younger days. I wish I got to meet Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston was a great fighter, and I believe overall very underrated. My third favorite is Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was a great fighter, and the battles that he fought in the ring weren't even as hard for him as the ones he fought outside the ring. And I think that everything that was going on in his life and how he maintained and was such a worldwide celebrity. Remember, Tom Molyneux, the guy I wrote my book about, was really the first international celebrity, and he was followed by Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was internationally known, and to deal with the racism that was happening at his home, and to be railroaded with the Mann Act and to leave the country, and I don't think a lot of you young fans know the ramifications of what went on in Jack Johnson's life. And to me, he's one of the greatest of all time. I know the style was different back then, but definitely a top five for me. I have him at number three, my number three favorite fighter. Number four is Jack Dempsey. Love Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey was great for the little guy. The little guy that clobbered the big guys all the time. Wild, very, mean, devastating puncher, freak of nature, was as big as life itself. And he also was very big and successful after his career, which he remained in New York for the longest time till the IRS took his place away. But he's number 4. And number 5 is my paisan, man, Rocky Marciano. For a guy that ultimately did everything wrong, for a guy that people laughed at about his boxing abilities, for a guy that I believe is an all-time great because he lacked the skill set that we normally see with all-time greats, and he was able to do it with pure power and being physically fit and heart. He's a guy that I don't think will ever be matched, whether his record is or not. But those are my top favorites, man. Those are my 5 top favorites. So thank you, Seth from Mamaroneck. Hey, listen, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, Scotty Krause, the guy who was as old as stones themselves.
Are you ready, America? Then let's get it on with Fight Now TV. It's time, fight fans. Your channel has arrived. All the fights, all the names, all the action. From world-class boxing events to mixed martial arts showdowns and other combat sports matchups, Fight Now TV delivers the hits and more. Call your television provider and tell them you want to get it on with Fight Now TV. For more details, go to fightnow.com.
We've got a great matchup tonight. Fighting out of the left corner is the number 1 ranked contender.
No, he is not.
I'm sorry, but who are you?
I am the IDO computer. I am programmed to provide only fair and unbiased boxing rankings. This fighter is the number 15 ranked contender.
Fair and unbiased boxing rankings? That's a new concept.
Actually, it is not. The IDO has provided unbiased computerized rankings for many years.
Well, we've still got a great fight tonight, folks. In the left corner is the number 15 ranked contender.
The IBO, the champion of integrity. Learn more at iboboxing.com.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts. Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you. I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning.
As a young boy, all Billy C dreamed about was one day having his own catchphrase.
And we're back. And we're back.
One boy, one dream, one day, everyone will say.
And we're back. 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 And we're back.
Catchphrase coming soon to a theater near you.
And we're back. You are listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C show. And you're watching us on the Fight Now television channel. Glad you could join us. And, I'm wondering if we got Scott on the line. I don't think we do. Are you there, Scotty? No, we don't. It looked like there was some kind of issue going on with the line. Let's see if I can get him again. It threw me all off here. It's throwing me all off. It looked like at first it looked like it might have been on our end, but we'll see what's going on. Maybe Scotty is forgot about our segment today. But we'll wait and see if I can get him on. If not, I'm going to move on and talk about the greatest fight series myself, my own damn self. And then we'll get Alex on, and we'll talk about the blast from the past. And no, looks like Scotty's blowing us off. So see what happened there. I hope everything's all right, and we'll get Alex on in a little bit. As a matter of fact, maybe Alex will come on a little early. Hint, hint, Alex. But let's do this. Let me talk about the greatest fight series because it's something that Scotty and I normally do today. And, the whole show was pretty much going to talk about that, this segment anyway. But today's greatest fight series features one of the greatest fights. It was regarded as one of the greatest fights of the time. And if you've never seen it, I strongly suggest that you punch it up. It is available on YouTube. It took place on September 23rd in 1957, and it was between Sugar Ray Robinson regarded by many, including myself, as the best pound-for-pound fighter of all time, against Carmen Basilio. Now, Carmen Basilio was the welterweight world champion at the time, going into this fight, and Sugar Ray Robinson was the middleweight champion. Now, here's the thing, and a lot of people forget this. You know, when we talk about Sugar Ray Robinson, most people refer to him as a middleweight, like was the case in this fight. But Sugar Ray Robinson had already become very successful as a welterweight, and most of his welterweight accomplishments are not on video. Nobody ever taped them. Nobody ever recorded them. So most of the stuff that we have in him that we can watch is him as a middleweight. Now, he had retired. He was one of these guys that had retired and come back and retired and come back and retired and come back. So by the time he stepped foot in this ring for this fight, which was at Yankee Stadium, and there was over 35,000 people in attendance for this fight, he was 37 years old, which was pretty damn old back then. Today, when you say 37, you don't really even blink. You know, you're like, oh, well, yeah, okay, yeah, he's a couple of years older than he should be. But 37 back in 1957, you know, in the boxing business was pretty damn old. And, you know, Ray Robinson was the champion at 37. So he steps in. Now, the height difference was pretty noticeable with this. You know the old saying: a good small man will beat a good big man will beat a good small man every time, unless the small man is Carmen Basilio, because Carmen Basilio and you know, I know this sparked a debate about Carmen Basilio and you know who. And, you know, one of the fights I had watched with Carmen Basilio recently was the Tony DeMarco fight. And I said to myself, man, this guy's tough to hurt. Well, now I get to see him fight. Again, I reviewed the fights, and I get to see him fight a Sugar Ray Robinson, who, I mean, if you ever want to see how effective a jab can be, watch Sugar Ray Robinson, especially in this first fight with Carmen Basilio. These guys... you know, got in there, and, you know, that's what, you know, this fight was like. I mean, when you watch this fight, it was basically a back-and-forth fight from the opening bell to the end. One interesting note, when the referee brought these two guys together in the center of the ring and was giving them the final instructions, Sugar Ray Robinson was a guy that used to give the old stare down, you know. And he kind of looked down at Carmen Basilio. And some of the recordings you can catch this, and some you can't. But he kind of looks down at Carmen Basilio, and he kind of gives him this little, you know, like snarl, you know, like you're gonna get it, little man, you know. And Carmen Basilio. Now, I've gotten to meet Carmen Basilio many times. You know, while he was around up at the Canastota Hall of Fame and you know, some other events, and he's a character. He was a great guy, and the one thing that you're not going to ever be able to do to him was you weren't ever going to be able to intimidate him, and that's what Sugar Ray Robinson was trying to do. So the referee's giving him these final instructions, and Sugar Ray Robinson's like looking down on him, and you got to see, there is a YouTube of it because I saw it, and he's like kind of like quivering his lip, and he's like, you know, probably growling at him. You couldn't hear what he was saying, but Carmen Basilio looks at him and starts laughing. I don't mean just like a fake laugh. I don't mean a Floyd Mayweather fake smile. I'm talking this guy starts breaking down laughing. And the referee, like, kind of stopped and looks over at Carmen and is like, you all right? You know, like he was losing his mind or something. Carmen Basilio had to compose himself so the referee could finish giving him the last, rules there. And it kind of, the reason why I bring it up is because it kind of, you know, set what the rest of this fight was going to be like. There was no word of intimidation in this fight. Basically, what took place in this fight was they both had their moments. Sugar Ray Robinson was a master at the jab, and he had unbelievable power. That's another thing that people don't understand. Sugar Ray Robinson, his weakest asset was probably his defense because he was not afraid to engage. But he was peppering Basilio with his jab throughout this fight. But Carmen Basilio would eat the jab and come in with his crab offense and, really pound on the body of Sugar Ray Robinson. And the fight went back and forth. As the fight was unfolding, a severe cut formed for Carmen Basilio, and he overcame that. Basilio was rocked really bad early in the fight, and then came back and rocked Sugar Ray Robinson. In the 11th round, now remember, these are 15 rounds. In the 11th round, it was already being regarded as one of the greatest fights. In the 11th round, basically, the fight went back and forth. You thought it was going to be over. Robinson just comes out uncharacteristically and just unleashes like these heavy bombs and rocks Carmen Basilio several times in the first half of the round. In the second half of the round, Carmen Basilio comes back and does the same to Robinson. At the end of the round, they both stagger back to their corner, and then the last rounds, the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th, were just a display of very similar, going back and forth. And, I saw two tired fighters that didn't appear tired. They were both huffing and puffing, and they just didn't appear tired when the action was going on, something different than what you see today. Another thing different than what you see today is the judging. Now, I watched this fight. Obviously I've seen this fight many times, but preparing for this, I watched a couple of different versions of the fight, some clips. I watched the whole fight. I watched different, where they have the TV version and then, probably some home movie version and cut clips where you only see the action. And, I kind of watching this fight and I'm saying to myself, one thing I really noticed was that if this fight were happening today, I think the outcome would have been different. I thought the fight was pretty damn close. I said to myself, unofficially scoring it, I thought that, the fight could have easily have been a draw. It was that close. But here's the thing. Sugar Ray Robinson in this fight began retreating. He was landing jabs. And if you watch this fight, you'll see that he was landing jabs flush. They weren't like he was landing a jab or two as he's running away. He was on his bicycle. There's no question about it. And but he was being effective. So, today we see it a lot with who and other fighters, and they get awarded the decision. But back in those days, being the guy that was, the aggressor, being the guy that was trying to bring the fight to your opponent, got the nod. And that's what happened in this fight. When the smoke cleared and the announcements came, the referee, now you had to, the way it worked back then for judging, just so FYI, the referees they counted as one. Their vote counted, and you had two judges. And they didn't do a point system. They did a round. So at the end of the round, they would, say, okay, so-and-so won this round. Which, think about it. You could say that that's a good way. But how often do we watch fights today where that last flurry kind of makes you think so-and-so won the round? I think a good rule to follow if you're scoring a card is to break it into 3 minutes, and try and, score the fight in 3 minutes, and then whoever wins, the more time wins the round. That's not how they did it. They scored it by the round. The referee scored the fight for Robinson, 9 rounds to 6 for Sugar Ray Robinson. The judges both scored it for Carmen Basilio. One had it 9 rounds for Basilio, 5 for Robinson, and 1 even. And the other had it 8 rounds for Basilio, 6 rounds for Robinson, and 1 round even, giving him the split decision win. I unofficially kind of thought the fight was too close. I would have called it a draw. But ultimately, Carmen Basilio won the title. It was a fantastic fight. They would have a rematch where Sugar Ray Robinson would win the title back. And it was just as close of a fight, just as great of a fight. And Carmen Basilio always wanted a third fight that Robinson never gave him. interesting side note about this fight. Sugar Ray Robinson was obviously the draw. Not that Carmen Basilio wasn't. He made $500,000 for this fight. $500,000 was huge money. You know, we talk about Floyd Mayweather making big bucks and stuff today, but it was no different back then when you put in perspective that, you know, in 1957, somebody, working at a job was probably making $3,000 a year. You know, $3,000 a year. You know, they were paying $20 a month for rent. You know, a gallon of gas was free. No, it was a couple of cents. 10 cents, 15 cents a gallon. So you put it in perspective. I mean, here's a guy who made $500,000, and he was just as wasteful with his money, except the government was on his ass. The government was at the fight with their hand out. They seized his whole purse, $500,000, for anticipated. Their reasoning was for anticipated back due taxes, which I thought was amazing. Our government, who destroys us more than our own government, right? Well, they definitely destroyed fighters throughout the history, that's for sure. As far as Carmen Basilio goes, he had his own little things going on in this fight. Number one, ever since Henry Armstrong had held the titles simultaneously, this fight was in New York. I criticized the New York State Athletic Commission today, but they were no different back then. As soon as Carmen Basilio won the world title, he didn't get to make the decision at which belt he was going to defend. The New York State Athletic Commission made the decision for him, immediately stripping him of his welterweight title and now regarding him as the world middleweight champion. So great stuff happening there, and that's what took place. It's our greatest fight series. It was the first Carmen Basilio against Sugar Ray Robinson fight. It was a great one. If you've never seen it, definitely check it out because it was definitely worthwhile. And speaking of worthwhile, joining us right now is Alex Papali. What's up, brother?
Hey, good morning, Billy C. Yeah, I've never seen. I've seen clips of both of them, but I've never watched. Both of them back to back, or in their entirety. Round to round.
It was a great.
And like Coach is saying in the chat room, it does look, when you look at the box rec, as you mentioned, the scoring. It did seem like the scoring changed between the two bouts, and they both won Fight of the Year.
Yeah, well, they were both excellent fights, and I happened to, I when I was preparing for this with Scotty, I ended up watching both of them, because I was so interested in it, and what hit me the most was the fact that, if it was being scored today, I think Sugar Ray Robinson easily wins both of them because, and I hate to use this, and forgive me, world, for what I'm about to say, but the punch stats would have showed that Sugar Ray Robinson clearly had the advantage. I mean, he was landing, 3, 4, 5 jabs, and I'm not talking about little pitter-pat jabs. I'm talking about jabs with conviction, but he was moving backwards, Alex, and back then they gave more credit to a Carmen Basilio who moved forward, who ate those 6 or 7 jabs and then landed 2 or 3 power shots. He got the edge there, which I find pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's going to depend on what judges you had too, because some like the the guy who comes forward, and then other guys would like the guy who's busier. One fight that I think, it's certainly, I'm not comparing the quality of the athletes, but it was probably sort of similar styles, was Mayorga versus Vernon Forrest. I remember the second one was kind of like that, was a close decision. And you had Mayorga, Forrest probably did win big on the punch stat, but he was boxing.
We just lost you, Alex. Give us a shout back. You knew that was going to happen. But anyway, Alex was referring to the Carlos Mayorga, Ricardo Mayorga fight, and Vernon Forrest, and you never know. You never know with the way the judges are. The thing that bothers me sometimes with the way judges go, when a fighter is backpedaling, and I could see their point when a fighter is backpedaling, as long as they're making contact, it should count as a punch. Sorry about that, man. You knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's so yeah. I mean, like Sugar Ray Robinson himself said, it's a hurt business. So you do want to give it to tend to give it to the guy who's doing more damage.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think they try to look at that more and not, whether the fighter's moving forward or not. But it was a fight that again displayed. I was always a Carmen Basilio fan, but I got to admit, in the last 6 months or so, I think his stock in my mind is actually going up, Alex, because you couldn't hurt this guy. I mean, the punches that I've seen other fighters land on him. And it makes me laugh. And what really made me do it was, the comparisons that a lot of you young fans are making with today's fighters. And I understand their thought. It's their heroes. It's their, they're the fans of these guys, and they don't want to play second fiddle to any. But, God, I can't even put a guy in the same category as Basilio today. I couldn't even say, oh, so-and-so's like him,
Yeah, I mean, in terms of his durability, it's freakish. I mean, you'd have to go to somebody like a Brandon Rios, but, I mean, this would be somebody who's just so much more durable and so many more years and just took a lot of beating.
Yeah, but you know what the big difference is that Carmen Basilio, and I like the analogy. I mean, he actually is a name that pops into my head as well, but the difference is, what kind of defense do you see from Bam Bam Rios? Nothing. He uses the face block. He wears you down while you're trying to wear him down. But with Carmen Basilio, you see head movement, man, like you don't see today. You see a guy that, I mean, there was a sequence in the Sugar Ray Robinson fight in the first one where Sugar Ray Robinson, I think it was the 13th round or something like that, was extremely aggressive. And he was unleashing these barrage of punches. I mean, and he was so fast, and he was an accurate puncher. He didn't connect with one. I mean, every single fight, and talk about getting low. It looked like they were. What do they call that when you go underneath the
limbo?
Limbo. It looked like it looked like he was going to do that. I mean, Carmen Basilio was so low, crouching down and moving his head from side to side, that Sugar Ray Robinson didn't connect with one. And that's something you don't see today. It's like it was a complete package. I don't know, man. You got to check it out. It's available. You can see it on YouTube. I think I even have a copy of it, and I know we can get some copies of that. But listen, I'm in the non-break mood today, and I appreciate you calling in now because I want to talk about the fights over the weekend and stuff like that. But let's do our blast right now, which is being sponsored by the International Boxing Organization, where their computerized system is second to none. Check them out at iboboxing.com. And today's Blast from the Past features a guy that was a pretty damn good fighter that nobody's ever heard of. Tell us about Frank Klaus.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with his name, too.
Is it Klaus or Klaus or Klees?
Is it Klaus? I mean, I don't want to make it sound like this guy's, like, related to Santa Claus.
Yeah, I know. That's the way it's spelled.
Like Frank Klaus.
I know. That's
yes. He spent some time in the North Pole.
Yeah.
And,
he was known for his white fluffy beard.
Yeah, he has these very small little people, craftsmen that he hangs around with. No, but so yeah, maybe it's Klaus. Frank Klaus, born December 30th, 1887 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's 5'7.5" tall, and he fought as a middleweight. He was kind of hefty, kind of stocky for the height, real big puncher, and he could turn things around with his power.
You mean he was kind of a short, pudgy, tall, thin guy? He's kind of a tall, short, wide, thin guy. Yeah, he was
kind of he was kind of like a stocky guy.
Yeah, I know.
Or stocky, thick-bodied.
Big boned.
Big bone, yeah. But he did have quite a record. I mean, they think of him as he didn't have a lot of fights for the age. I was a little surprised in terms of his total bouts compared to guys from this age. I mean, man, he's got more like a professional of today.
Well, wait a
in
minute.
the area of around 40 bouts.
No, you're missing all the newspaper decisions. The newspaper decisions alone, he had 34 wins, 10 losses, and 12 draws. They were rendered no decisions. He fought during that time, so it's a little skewed. I think he's got over 70-something fights.
Okay. So well, it doesn't look like it's that long, though.
But
compared to some of the guys, but
one thing I want to say about his era, real quick, is that this was that era where people claimed to be the champ, and then you had to beat them. Which we talk about rough and tumble era of the bare knuckle time. This was like that first era after that, which seems pretty wild and Western gunslinger type of an era in the sport. In the early 1900s.
Yeah, and it does. You're right about the newspaper decisions as well. Draws were not as uncommon, and they weren't as much of a sort of, I wouldn't say they're a stain on your record today, but nobody wants to walk around with a lot of draws, but back then it seemed like the scoring even was tougher. I mean, they all scored kind of like Teddy Atlas, where they love the even rounds. When you read these old newspaper reports, a lot of times they'll be like, there was the fight was 3 rounds to one guy, 2 to the other, and then 4 even. And it's like, wow, that many even rounds? So it did seem like that was a lot more. And he drawed with Stanley Ketchel, the great Stanley Ketchel.
Well, he fought a lot. You whether his name is Claus or Klaus or whatever, he's fought all of them. Billy Papke, you mentioned Stanley Ketchel. He also fought some guys that were known as heavyweights during the Jack Johnson era, like Porky Dan Flynn and Leo Huck or however you pronounce it. He fought them. Tommy Sullivan. Just some Jack Dillon, who was light. I think he fought as a light heavyweight too. Some great fighters, but the fight that a couple of fights that stick out was Cyclone Johnny Thompson, which is a guy we should do a blast on sometime. We see his name pop up. This guy was claiming that he was the champion, and it was kind of a weird situation when he fought him. He fought him a couple times, but the time that he fought him in 1911, Cyclone Johnny was claiming to be the world middleweight champion, but they were fighting in a place where you couldn't render a decision unless somebody got knocked out. And it was a tough fight that actually most newspapers gave to Frankie. And although he couldn't claim the title because it wasn't a legitimate legal decision. Weird stuff back then, huh?
Yeah, and see, this was the reason why I was bringing up Stanley Ketchel was because there was a sort of turmoil that then happened because once he died, everybody knows about his untimely death. He was considered the middleweight champion, so now it was almost created a box off. And Frank Klaus was one of the guys. Cyclone Johnny Thompson was another. Jack Dillon was up there. Eddie McGorty was another guy that was in there. Billy Papke. So these guys, it was almost like they had a Super Six type of a tournament, and it wasn't even as organized as that. It was, that's the sort of beautiful thing when you look back at these this age. Even then, where you had this tragic circumstance of Stanley Ketchel, being shot and then the middleweight picture falling apart, it was sort of presumed these guys are all going to fight each other and the best one will emerge. Today, they wouldn't be presumed. Each one would win their own title.
Right. Or whoever's with the promoter with the most money buys them a title, and they get a box of cereal with it as well.
Yeah.
But what you're right, and they did fight each other. And then when they generally, and even coaches in the chat room reminding us that he had a no decision with Harry Greb. So this guy fought them all. But when
that one was weird because I couldn't find a report on that, and that was he had sort of gone into retirement according to Cyber Boxing Zone. What hadn't been in the ring for 5 years, and then has the exhibition with Greb, but I couldn't find a report on that. I would have been interested to, but Bert Sugar makes mention it as well in his Harry Greb section.
Yeah, well, yeah, that came later on after the George Chip fights, but he
Chip was the one who kind of closed the show on him. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he was sort of thought of as the European middleweight champ because of what he did to Carpentier.
Well, let's get to the title when he officially was being recognized by the world. Because like I said, I mentioned earlier. And for everybody that doesn't understand, these guys would claim to be the champ. Then it was up to you to take that belt away. So theoretically, we complain about, multiple champions today. Well, if you're in California and I'm in New York and I'm claiming to be the world champion, you're claiming to be the champ in California, because media didn't travel as quickly as it does today, we could have had a lot of claimed championships. But the official took place actually against an obscure opponent, in my opinion, in 1912. Sailor Ed Petrowski was when he was universally, accepted as the world middleweight champion.
Yeah, I don't see it. Mine, I thought it was Billy Papke.
Well, Billy Papke was regarded as one, but that came after. Remember that Billy Papke was before Cyclone Johnny Thompson was walking around telling everybody he was the champ, and that took place in 1911. The Papke fight. Are you referring to the Papke fight in 1909?
No, in 1913.
Oh, the second Papke fight. Yeah. Well, no, he had already had the title according to the Boxing Hall of Fame. Anyway, they recognize him as 1912. But anyway,
he didn't fight. I only see him fighting Papke. In 1913, I only saw.
1909 too.
Well, no, I don't see that at all. And Cyber Boxing Zone doesn't have that.
Yeah, it was a newspaper decision. Maybe they don't have the newspaper decisions.
Oh, wait a minute. There it is. I'm sorry.
And
yeah, in 1909, he had knocked out 2 guys in one day.
Yeah, well, they were allowed to do that back then. and the Papke fight, he won on a disqualification, right?
Yeah, the second one he did.
Yeah. Well, he was still at the top of his game, fighting the best of the business until he met up with George Chip, George Chip. And he lost both of those fights by knockout. Incidentally, the only times he was ever stopped in his whole career.
Yeah, from what I was seeing, it seemed like that was where things. And I didn't even see the actual year that Ketchel died, but it seemed like that's when things really heated up. Was 1913. And it went back and forth, back and forth. Every one of those fights he was involved in, and those other guys that he was fighting, Eddie McGordy, Papke, Jack Dillon, and George Chip, it seemed like those were all the guys in contention. And back then, and it was almost like was the WBC, IBF, and WBA.
Oh, all claiming to be champions, you mean?
Yeah, because exactly, each one, but nobody had an official title until Chip made those 2. Here's the way the book Pen and Out by Alexander Johnston put it, and I thought they put it really nicely. I love the language back then. It says, in 1913, Kloss beat Eddie McGordy in a 6-rounder in Pittsburgh. His claim to the title was being taken seriously when all of a sudden came his pugilistic finish. He took on George Chip, who had been making strong pretensions to the title but had not received very serious consideration. This was in October 1913, and Chip knocked Kloss cold in 6 rounds. Frank said it was all a mistake, and Chip agreed to give him another chance. The second time, Chip did the trick in 5 rounds. After that second knockout of Kloss, Chip was generally accepted as the middleweight champion.
Yeah, and Kloss walked away from the sport after that because that was the end of the fight, except for those exhibitions. He was also. Did you hear some crazy stuff? I read that in 1920, a newspaper in Sacramento, the Sacramento Star, says that Kloss had an operation where they put monkey glands grafted into his body. Did you read that?
Really? No. No, I didn't find anything about him, and very brief obituary in terms of after boxing. I wonder, because he eventually died of a heart attack.
Maybe it was
I wonder if he had some kind of, that's why he needed the monkey gland.
Well, I don't know. He died in 1948. The monkey glands were installed in 1920, and he was pretty successful in his retirement. He got into the hotel business, and he was a guy that owned several hotels and did okay. He didn't die penniless, but he did die fairly young at 60 years old. Former world champion. Middleweight world champion.
His brother runs that whole Christmas business.
Yeah, Santa. He's been doing that for a while. He just keeps stepping on his help. I don't know what that's about. But Frank Claus, former world champion, boxing Hall of Famer, had a career record of 32 wins, 21 coming by knockout. He had 5 losses. He was stopped 2 times. Those are his last 2 fights. He had 2 draws. He also had 34 newspaper wins. 10 losses and 12 draws. He had 624 rounds as a professional with a 23% knockout ratio. Frank Claus, a true blast from the past. Great job again, Alex. And we're not taking a break, but I wanted to talk to you about B-Hop. And I guess it didn't turn out like Tom King, huh?
No, it didn't. It went a lot better for him. It really was a situation where Cloud, I'm sure he's kicking himself because I think that the layoff really definitely hurt him. And I think B-Hop knew that. That's the thing that's beautiful about B-Hop is that he really, and I think Andre Ward made note of it at some point, that, not to take anything away from Cloud, but at some point, when his career ends, he still will have not learned. Bernard Hopkins will have forgotten more that most fighters know today. That's just the way it is. And there's things about him that he's a craftsman. And if you think about it, say you got a nice piece of furniture, the guy who put that thing together is probably, he's really good at it. Sitting there and watching him put it together is probably not very fun. But you still can look at it and appreciate what he has built. That's the way Hopkins kind of is. He puts together a win. He discombobulates the guy. And I thought it was pretty impressive. The first couple of rounds were a little stale, but it definitely got better. And it was just amazing to see how he did it to this young guy.
I don't like Bernard Hopkins, the person, but I can't deny the performance on Saturday night at all. What he did in those stale rounds, which I agree with you, he laid the groundwork which set him up to look so good in the later rounds. And what that groundwork was that when Cloud, who was trying to get him into the corners and against the ropes and inflict some damage, B-Hop was very conservative with his energy. And when he he drove that bus, there's no question about that. He let Cloud get him against the ropes and into the corners. And every time Cloud would go to, and this is early in the fight, every time Cloud would go to, unleash an attack, B-Hop would be first and land a counterpunch that clearly stung Cloud. The payoff came later in the fight when Cloud actually anticipated the retaliation from B-Hop, and then when he got Bernard Hopkins against the ropes and into the corner, he wasn't even throwing any punches. And B-Hop turns around and wins hands down. Subtly in the early rounds, B-Hop was landing a punch or two here, and you could have argued and said maybe Cloud won it. But in the later rounds, there was no question that Bernard Hopkins was getting stronger and stronger and stronger, it seemed. And Cloud lost it, man. Listen, hats off to Bernard Hopkins. I question why Cloud decided. Nothing against Abel Sanchez, but why Cloud decided to make a trainer move this late in the game for such an important fight. That's always a thing that boggles my mind. Why these guys do it? They when you're in the heat of battle, you need to just tune into a voice you're familiar with, and even though that they had been working together for several months, that wasn't the voice that he heard.
Yeah, he had that working against him. the layoff. I think the layoff was really bad.
I agree. And Bernard Hopkins,
stage,
Bernard Hopkins can handle a layoff better than anyone. And Cloud obviously couldn't. And remember, the fight that he had before this was pretty controversial. Many people thought he lost. Yeah. So I mean, maybe the word overrated is going to come in. Which gives me this question, which asks me to ask you this question: what's next for Hopkins? I read somewhere that they're trying to say Carol Murat is his mandatory for the IBF, which makes me laugh because Bernard Hopkins has enough clout and juice to say to IBF, no, I'm not fighting him, I'm fighting this guy, and then the IBF will say, okay, we're giving him, he's allowed to make a voluntary defense before his mandatory, which will set up a fight. But who's it going to be against? The rumors are Nathan Cleverly, which is a great fight for the light heavyweight division, but I kind of think it's going to be Andre Ward because that's a great fight for both bank accounts.
Oh, of course, and I think it's the All-American fight. I think that American audiences, of course, want that. You have the old-timer, pound-for-pound considered guy in Bernard Hopkins, and you have the new pound-for-pound guy in Andre Ward. And you have the fact that Bernard Hopkins, at the end of the fight, went right over to him. You saw him do it at the end, walk over to him and lean over the ropes and say, I'm never going to fight you. And I mean, it was like, to me, that was almost like, oh, so you do want to fight him next.
Yeah, right.
Because he was like, there's not enough money in the world that could let me fight you. I mean, remember, that's what Sugar Ray Leonard did to Marvin Hagler, where he had that one of those announcements where there's clips you could find of it. I can remember HBO showing it on one of their documentaries where it was some other fight. It was a fight card where Ray Leonard was not fighting, and he got into the ring, as somebody just that was there, and I think he's even wearing a tuxedo, or maybe it was at a dinner or something, and he said, this is the fight that everybody would like to see. Unfortunately, it'll never happen.
Yeah, but
and to me, and Marvin was sort of upstaged by the moment. Bernard sort of did that.
Yeah, but it was even worse. Sugar Ray Leonard had this big announcement. Remember, he brought Marvin in, and it was a big affair. And I think it was in Washington or something, and brings everybody in, and Marvin thought, this is it. They're going to announce that we're going to fight and everything else. And he parades Marvin Hagler around and all of this stuff, and then he gets up and says the fight's never going to happen. And even Marvin, was like, "What are you talking about?" But the thing is this: when I look at those two potential fights, and what makes the Nathan Cleverly fight a strong possibility is the promoter for Nathan Cleverly. Especially now, is in some trouble. Lost a couple of his top fighters in Frank Warren, and he's got the money, contrary to what people think. And he's got the juice. He's got the connections. He could offer enough money for Bernard to go to England and fight. And I think that the styles of Nathan Cleverly and Bernard Hopkins will make that a tougher fight for Bernard Hopkins because of the nonstop action that Nathan Cleverly likes to bring. He likes to throw lots of punches. Which, let's face it, Bernard Hopkins tries to slow the pace down of a fight like he did with Cloud and like he always does. I'm not so sure he could do that with Cleverly. But Andre Ward, I think, as much as I regard Andre Ward right now as the pound-for-pound best fighter and as much as I love him and he's shown us everything, every aspect of the game, I'm thinking that Bernard Hopkins could manipulate Andre Ward a little. What's your thoughts?
I don't think so.
No?
I think he's too good. I think that fight might be dreadful to watch, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to see. Of course, you can't help but wonder. And in part, it's because, of course, Andre Ward already knocked off the number one guy at 175, even though he's at 168. So, I mean, also the winner of Froch Kessler is interesting. But let's remember, Bernard is still old. And the only knock you can say about him is that the fights that he's won and looked good, Pascal and Cloud, they were certain kinds of opponents. where they were young enough and inexperienced enough where he could exploit real, to be honest, fragility in their psyches, not even their abilities, because remember Pascal did hurt him, and Cloud, I think if Cloud was more active, he wouldn't have been lulled into so much inaction.
Well, I don't think he's just smart. I think Cloud isn't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Well, and that's what I mean, is that I don't know about his IQ, whatever, his intellect, but in terms of boxing sense, he's there to be picked apart by a guy who's a psychological master.
You're right.
And Bernard knew that. Against a guy like Andre Ward, he's not going to have that. There's something about Andre Ward. The kid he's put together well. He certainly seems that way. And I think that, excuse me, that I do think there are other opponents overseas that do make, that, like you're saying, the Caro Moret and Nathan Cleverly, but are there audiences for that? I mean, I think the thing that was most interesting about that Brooklyn audience, they came there to see Bernard.
I know.
He does draw.
No,
he doesn't draw a lot. I don't know what they said that the weigh-in was very poorly attended.
Well,
but
that actually
an indicator.
That actually brought a tear to my eye. I was shocked to hear the support, and I think he's become above. I think non-boxing fans are following him because he's more like a novelty, and he's still performing. The thing that I gave him credit for is, he's still performing. It's not like a pathetic old fighter in there. I mean, yes, he's old, and yes, he's boring at times, but he's still at championship level. And
let's face it, we're in America, and there's far fewer and fewer American stars in this sport, and he's one of them.
No doubt. And you know what? I like, you mentioned Carl Froch. I like Bernard Hopkins. I love Carl Froch. I think Carl Froch is a great fighter. But styles make fights, and I think Bernard Hopkins, I think he you see, my biggest knock on Carl Froch is that Carl Froch keeps his hands down. And I think a guy like Bernard Hopkins, with his solid defense, with his wherewithal and knowledge of the game, will really expose that deficiency in Froch enough to win. I'm not saying he's going to knock Froch out or hurt him or anything like that, but I think he's close enough and in his face enough to neutralize Froch's power, which is to land a bomb, from arm's distance away. And I think that maybe that is a lucrative fight for him, because Froch's people would clearly pay to have Bernard Hopkins in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, Froch has a big battle in front of him with Kessler, but yeah, I mean, I would like to see it. I would like to see him versus Ward. I would like to see him against Froch. Both those guys, I mean, even though Ward beat Froch, I still think of Froch as, top 10, top 12 in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think he's definitely one of the best fighters on earth. He's had a hell of a schedule. He's fought everybody for his weight class.
Yeah.
And if he beats Kessler, I think that I would like to see the Ward rematch, quite frankly.
Yeah, listen, I'm okay with any of the fights we're talking about, except Murat. I don't think he fits into the picture at all. I think that's a joke that the IBF...
Well, there's that Kovalev kid, too. I mean, that's somebody, he's so aggressive.
Yeah, but there's not enough money for it, Alex.
Yeah,
remember,
true. That's a good point.
Remember, Bernard Hopkins isn't Nathan Cleverly. He's not a guy that's going to be looking at fights. I got 3 more fights I could go to this guy. He's looking at 1 fight, 2 fights. Where can I make the most money? And when you shake out everybody,
he's going to fight 5 more years.
Yeah, come on. Listen. He's going to fight till somebody beats his ass, and until he makes enough money, which he wants. And the guy hasn't spent a nickel, so I know he's got a huge bank account someplace. But the bottom line is this: when you look at who's going to make him the most money, really only 2-3 names surface to the top, and that's Andre Ward, Nathan Cleverly, or Carl Froch. I mean, realistically, who else is there? You know, he's not going to take on a young gun. There's too much risk, not enough reward. He's going with the money, and those three names, at least in my opinion.
Well, what about, because isn't it Pascal and Butte are fighting? I mean, what about the winner there? You do have Montreal, that's a big fight town now.
Yeah, but you know what? Been there, done that. Been there, done that. He fought maybe Butte if he can pull out the win, but Pascal, I doubt you're going to see that. Chad Dawson is another name. He's in the mix. But I can't see that happening. Been there, done that. He's got to move on to something bigger and more lucrative. And I think Andre Ward would be the money. I think that because Andre Ward, remember, he's with Goosen. So, Golden Boy could definitely bid enough to get Andre Ward because Goosen certainly isn't going to, open up the checkbook. So, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. My other question to you real quick is not Tavoris Cloud, Keith Thurman. I think a lot of the general consensus that I see from the fans, not so much the writers, but the fans, that they weren't impressed with that fight, and I totally disagree. I mean, not that I'm a big Thurman fan. I mean, I saw something I didn't think I was going to see, Alex, and I saw a guy that showed me that he does have some patience, and he did remember how to box like he did in the amateurs, and he used a jab. I thought he was impressive. He was fighting a guy that was coming at him, just like Scotty said. I thought maybe Jan Zevic would try to have boxed him a little more, but he was right there for him. What's your thoughts on his performance, and where does he go from here?
I thought I liked how he looked. I thought he fought a very good fight. I'm not sure I love his style, quite honestly. I am a big fan of his power. He seems hittable, but I don't know. There's something about it. It's got a strange sort of awkwardness, but he does box well, and he's very good with distance, and he seems to gel well with Dan Birmingham. I think he really followed instructions well, and I mean he blanked the guy. He won every round, and even though Zabic had moments, I had no problem with that scorecard. I thought that was a legitimate shutout. Because I thought Zabic, as gutsy an effort it was, I think he only did have moments, and you'd have to really scrounge to find a round to give him.
How about towards the end of the fight when Zabic's corner says to him, I think it was the 10th round, he says, okay, now you rest this round. You rested. I'm saying to myself, rest? You're losing every round. You should be telling the guy, listen, you're behind on the scorecards. The only way you're going to win this fight is if you knock him out. They're telling him to take a round off. It's towards the end of the fight. I didn't understand that. He must have really showed signs to his corner. And then you have to say to yourself, listen, if your fighter is in that much trouble that you're telling him to rest when he doesn't have a shot in hell of winning the fight unless he knocks his opponent out, maybe stop the fight. Why make him go through the damage,
Yeah.
Hey,
it did seem like he was getting, I don't know, I mean, because at some point I was thinking, boy, could he put more pressure on Zabic and maybe stop him? But that was sort of something that he seemed to make a decision, like round about 9th or 10th round, that, I'm going to get these rounds in.
Well, he never was. Zabic has a granite chin. The only reason why he had the stoppage previously was because of cuts. I mean, this wasn't a guy that was knocked out. So
right. But I would think that a guy like that with so much power, I got the feeling that if he wanted to close off the angles and really try to get the KO, you'd see him sort of change his style to work for it. But I got the feeling he had decided, okay, we're not going to do that. We're gonna get these rounds in here, and I thought that was probably a smart decision because he's still building something, and you never know. The guy Zabic obviously came there to win. He didn't come there just to be a step up for the kids. So you want to be careful,
Yeah, and listen, Zabic may not have won a round on most of the scorecards, but he rocked Thurman a couple of times, and Thurman had to respect his own, Zavic's power. I mean, there's no question there. Real quick, before I ask you about a fight this week, I want to jump back to B-Hop for a second. You heard the Talk to Me Man show, which I thought went great the other day, and I had a really good caller ask me a pretty tough question, and I actually loved it. A guy from Washington called in, and he said, what my opinion was 20 years from now, if I can even feed myself in 20 years from now, but, who will have a better legacy, Floyd Mayweather Jr. or Bernard Hopkins? I thought it was a great question, and I couldn't believe, first of all, you know me, two of my most favorite fighters on the planet, but I couldn't even bat it. I couldn't even, it wasn't even a tough decision for me. I think Bernard Hopkins clearly, because of his not only longevity, but the level of his opposition. I mean, listen, you could say what you want about him, but he's never backed down or backed away or stayed away from a fight. I mean, he's seeked out the toughest opposition. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Bernard probably does, at least so far, edges him. The only thing I would say about it is that, and maybe some people would completely disagree with me on this, Floyd is in a much more, it's not only a glamorous division in the sense that, there's so many great fighters at welterweight in the history of the sport. The history is so rich at 147. Bernard Hopkins, I don't know, it's like the expectation's a little lower for the guys at 175. And you're right, Bernard, even though he hasn't campaigned there for years and years, he's whacked off the guys that are the very best. So that has to count, It's a tough one because, yeah, I think Mayweather certainly could have. He could have made it won it in a walkaway if he had a win over Margarito, if he had a win over Cotto when he was, if he had fought Cotto before Pacquiao. I don't know. There's things he could have done, but yeah, you're right. I would say right now I would lean toward Hopkins. And I know the Floyd lovers think that's insanity, but I think, like Joe Santoliquito said a couple of weeks ago, the Floyd at lightweight took a lot more risks than the Floyd now. The Bernard Hopkins has taken risks his whole career. Pretty much. And you know what? If they're going to put the emphasis in the O, that's ridiculous. And you can't argue. The point about the glamour and the divisions and stuff like that, I mean, that's a good point. What do you think about that? Like 160 versus 147. I mean, don't you think that yes, you got Sugar Ray Robinson, of course, that is middleweight, but I don't know. Well, listen, when you're talking about legacy and you're talking about overall resume, and I think that's what we have to keep in perspective here. And that's why, to me, Bernard Hopkins was an easy answer because – you're never going to be able. Listen, there's always going to be somebody that's going to say on Floyd's resume, assuming he walks away without being beat and stuff like that. There's always going to be someone that's going to say, well, he ducked Margarito. He didn't even want to fight Clottey. Nobody gives Pacquiao credit for Joshua Clottey, but Joshua Clottey was a tough out. I mean, nobody beat up Clottey like Pacquiao did when Pacquiao was in his prime. I mean, there's no one did. Mayweather avoided him like the plague. And who knows? Mayweather probably could have done the same. We don't know because he never got in the ring. You can't say that about Bernard Hopkins. You could say excitement factor. Of late, we're going to remember Floyd. His fights. More recently have been a little more exciting than in the past, but. I mean, what does he have? He's got the more money. He's got he's the the guy that's in the news more. But when push comes to shove, and you're looking at the complete body of work, I don't know, long-term legacy. I don't like B-Hop, person, but come on, man. I mean, he has fought the tougher opposition, and he seeked out the best, and he's fought them more than once. I think, and quite honestly. I'd watch the Pavlik Hopkins fight, the Hopkins Pascal fight. and the one we saw this weekend, I'd watch them again. Mayweather-Mosley is exciting for 2 rounds. Mayweather-Cotto had, maybe, 8 minutes, 9 minutes that were exciting. I mean, it's not like, even though people would say, Hopkins is, without argument, the more boring. Mayweather has his boring moments too. Let's be honest.
A lot, Alex, a lot. And you can sugarcoat it. You can call it the sweet science. You could at least one thing. With Bernard Hopkins, as boring as he is, and I've made the statement he couldn't draw flies to a garbage convention, which obviously I was wrong this week. But there's one thing about Bernard Hopkins. You never know. You just never know what's going to happen. And with Floyd, you can anticipate what's going to happen. I don't know, man. I mean, today, and like I said to the caller, you have to wait until the careers are actually over, and you have to, give it some time to settle in and really put it in perspective before you can make a decision like that. But today, if I had to make that decision, I'd have to go to B-Hop. Hey, we got to run, but quick.
And let's put it this way. If Mayweather, they both can still change things a little. Mayweather more. If Mayweather smokes Guerrero and then smokes Alvarez, I'd think of him a little bit higher. If he was to beat Martinez, wow, yes, I'd be thrilled.
Even if he fights Martinez, I'll give him credit. See, that's the difference. That's what I don't think that Mayweather or Mayweather fans they don't think like that. I'm saying I give him credit, even if he loses. I give him credit for fighting a guy like Martinez or even Saul Alvarez when and if that.
Yeah, you're right. They don't think of it that way. These are reality shows. These are like Keeping Up with the Kardashian people. They have bought into the mentality that his O means everything. They've lowered the bar in the way he's suggested they should, and that's what they believe.
Well, we'll see what happens in May. Hey, real quick, we're over our time, but who's going to win? Timothy Bradley or Ruslan Prodagnikov?
I'm going for Bradley. I looking forward to seeing him in the ring again. I think it should be a decent fight. I'm actually looking forward to Providence. I'm going to be going to Twin River on Friday night. I'm looking forward to seeing a sort of speaking of reality TV, a sort of contender reunion where Joey Spina is injured, so Pete Manfredo is going to be fighting Walter Wright, who was from the second season of The Contender. He's sort of a fill-in opponent on Manfredo's comeback here. So people could catch that on the Talking Boxing Twitter feed.
Hey, you might be meeting the other Alex. I got an email. He says he might go just so he can get a picture of the only 2 Alexes on the planet.
That'd be awesome.
That's you and the other Alex. So, Alex, great time. I appreciate you spending some extra time with us. And if I don't talk to you, have a great time at the fights. And I'll be looking forward to your #1 fight reports, man.
All right, Billy C. Take care.
All right. That's Alex Papali giving us the blast from the past and some other stuff. I got to take a break. When I come back, I got some news to talk about. We got so many things to talk about and so little time.
Are you ready, America? Then let's get it on with Fight Now TV. It's time, fight fans. Your channel has arrived. All the fights, all the names, all the action. From world-class boxing events to mixed martial arts showdowns and other combat sports matchups, Fight Now TV delivers the hits and more. Call your television provider and tell them you want to get it on with Fight Now TV. For more details, go to fightnow.com.
Broadcasting in all corners of the globe, on the web and radio.
He would scoff at a stretcher, that man, I would think.
You're listening to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. From upstate New York in the good old US of A.
Boxing is here to stay because we are here to stay.
The best 2 hours of boxing talk on the airwaves.
Hey, fight fans, check out KOFantasyBoxing.com. KO Fantasy Boxing is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters, track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Join it today. Again, www.kofantasyboxing.com and tell them Billy C sent you.
Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C., the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C, damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
The undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2. My fellow Americans, good evening. Welcome back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It's great to be here discussing the sweet science with everybody. I love boxing. I love talking boxing. It's what I do.
Bill.
Wait, what?
Bill.
Why are you interrupting me? Wait, what?
Wrong.
What's
wrong,
the problem?
Billy
What?
C.
I did not have...
We're gonna have to ask you.
Wrong speech.
Leave.
What do you mean wrong, Billy C? What's going on here? Fine, I'll go. I just wanted to talk some boxing on TPSradio.net. That's all I wanted to do. I don't need your damn show. I'll get my own talking wrestling with the other Billy C. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I've always been a Hulkamaniac anyway.
Broadcasting live, brother. Welcome back to Talking Boxing with Billy C. on the mighty TPSradio.net, brother. What you gonna do, brother?
And we're back. You're listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C show. You're watching us on the Fight Now television channel. Glad you could join us. If you don't have Fight Now in your sports channel lineup, now's the time to call your local television provider, whether it's satellite dish or cable, and tell them that you want Fight Now right now. For all information about the channel, you can find it on their website, www.fightnow.com. Interesting stuff we got going on in the chat room. And speaking of the chat room, don't forget Mondays, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune into Billy C's Talk to Me, man. We had our debut this past Monday. It's great stuff right here on BillyCBoxing.com. You can check it out. And if you're a premium podcast subscriber, you'll get to listen to the show about a half hour after it's done. And we opened up the phone lines. We had some great stuff, man. Great topics by you guys, the listeners. You're driving the show, so if you want to send an email that will get discussed on the Talk to Me, Man show, just drop us an email. Talk to me, man, at BillyCBoxing.com. There's a fight tonight, and it's going to be taking place in Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico. And it's a Wednesday night fight, which I love. I love seeing fights on every night. We should have a different fight on every night, like Monday night fights, Tuesday night fights, and so on and so forth. Evaldo Ortega. He's got a record of 15-0 with a draw. He's got 7 knockouts. He's in the super bantamweight division. He's going to be putting his undefeated record on the line against Jose Guadalupe Tapia, who's a little above 500 with a 7-6 record. Main event, 10 rounds. So we'll talk about the result on that tomorrow. Did you hear that? We already talked about this yesterday, but I guess it's becoming more of a reality that Deontay Wilder and Tony the Tiger Thompson looks like that's going to be taking place within the next couple of months. I'm kind of torn with that fight. Number one, I like it because I think Deontay Wilder is a guy that has shot off his mouth, and he's got no reason to. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than a fighter that talks smack when he hasn't fought anybody. And I don't care what Deontay Wilder's Olympic achievements were, what his amateur achievements were. I don't care, man. I look at his pro record, and, he's 27-0 with 27 knockouts, and you're supposed to be all impressed and stuff. But take a glance down his resume. I mean, this is a almost a fraud with a capital F. But my hang-up, listen, let's make no mistake. Tony the Tiger Thompson will be, even at 41, will be the best opponent that Deontay Wilder has ever faced. But is it really a good gauge to see Deontay Wilder fight Tony Thompson? Tony Thompson was never anything in his prime, let alone at 41 years old. In his fight against David Price did the wrong thing. David Price didn't use his boxing ability. David Price stood in the wheelhouse and didn't give Tony Thompson any respect, and Tony Thompson landed a lucky punch and knocked him out. I say lucky because he's as slow as molasses. Wilder, it seems, is going to be thinking along the same lines as David Price. The question is, can Tony Thompson connect with one of them slow motion punches? Another thing, same thing as David Price, Deontay Wilder hasn't fought anyone that's as tall as him or close to it, like Tony Thompson is. So a couple of interesting things, but I don't think it's a gauge. I don't think it's fair. Hey, if you haven't seen, by the way, for everybody that's involved with the Billy C Challenge, the updated challenge rankings are there. Man, is it tough. This year is tough with the challenge. This month, everybody's winning percentage is on the down low. But it's up there, so check out where you stand for the month of March and for the year end. I think Murphy, my man Dave Murphy, I think he's at the top of the heap. Anyway, aside from me, for year to date, I think I have the best winning percentage, but not for the month. That's for sure. We got the new rankings up as well, and you could check those out. There was some movement there, but listen, I want to see a guy like like Deontay Wilder fight anybody that's in front of him in our rankings. Now, we have him ranked, let's see, at 16, 17, 18, 19. We got him ranked at number 20. And I'd like to see him fight Orlando Solis, Brian Jennings, Derek Chisora, Jonathan Banks, any of those guys. Now, Tony Thompson is ranked at number 10 for us, because he had been, in the top 10, and he dropped down a little bit, and with his win over David Price, he moved up a little bit. But 41 years old, a guy that's clearly doing it for the payday, I don't know, man. I don't know. The bottom line is that if Deontay Wilder beats, I think the reason why I want him to fight another young fighter is because he's going to be bragging that he's ready for a Klitschko if he beats Thompson, and he's not going to mention that Thompson's 41 years old. So I don't know. What's your thoughts on the fight? Drop me an email, Billy at TalkingBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com, or make it easy on yourself. You can just email me at BillyCBoxing.com, Billy at BillyCBoxing, or talk to me, man, at BillyCBoxing.com. I'm 50-50 on the fight. Did you catch that Gary Russell Jr.? It's another fighter that I get mixed feelings about from you guys. It seems that the fans aren't too crazy about Russell. They think that he should be fighting these blockbuster fights already and stuff. And I like this kid. I think he's talented, but I also like him. He's a respectful guy. He's family oriented. His father is part of his team, and not that usually works well, but it seems to be working okay for Gary Russell Jr. But what I really admire about this kid is something that I follow, and that's being loyal. I'm all about loyalty, and Gary Russell Jr. is a loyal guy to his team. Apparently 50 Cent has been courting him and trying to get him to jump ship and join up with SMS Promotions. And Gary Russell basically is saying, no, it's not happening. We're staying with our team, and that's that. And that there's a lot of money being tossed around and stuff like that. And, we'll see. We'll see. But Coach is saying Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, if Tyson Fury gets past Cunningham. I agree, man. I like that fight. And I think that that's a legitimate two young fighters on the up and up fighting each other. Now, Tyson Fury, we got to give credit for it. Tyson Fury has been stepping up his level of opposition. Steve Cunningham, although I don't think as much at the heavyweight. I didn't think he was much at cruiserweight, but I don't think he's much at heavyweight, although he looked fantastic against Adamek. 6'8", Tyson Fury's going to be a little tougher for him. But I would love to see Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder. Extremely, because my big thing on Tyson Fury is I question his chin, and the one thing you know about Wilder is he's got some pop. I don't care if he's knocking out cupcakes; he's still knocking them out. So anyway, we had talked about this in the past, but I want to make some clarifications. Juan Baby Bull Diaz is indeed making a comeback, which is we talked about last week, I believe. He is fighting April 13th, and he's clearly taken a baby step in his return, which he's, I don't have a problem with. He hasn't fought since 2010. But he's fighting Pepino Cuevas Jr., who's nothing like his father. His 16 wins, 9 losses, 14 of his wins coming by knockout. I guess that, he's kind of got his own promotional company, but this particular fight is being promoted by Golden Boy, which will ultimately find this fight on CBS on regular television, which is pretty cool. And I found it interesting to get some quotes here. He says, Baby Bull says, I've been off for more than 2 years and I didn't want to have anything exclusive. He's referring to his deal with Golden Boy. He says, with a promoter, at this point, he says, I just want to go out there and get some ring rust off. I have the motivation, I have the desire, and I have that. And he says, excuse my French, I don't give a damn mentality. I don't care who they put in front of me. I'm going to fight them. That's kind of some tough talk, some little PR talk when they putting a 16-9 fighter in front of him. It would be different if he's, trying to avenge a Nate Campbell loss or something like that. But he's fighting a 16-9 fighter. I don't care who they put in front of me as long as he's got a record of 16-9, But one of the things I want to point out, which I was really misled. I have said many times that I give Juan Baby Bull Diaz a lot of credit because, he graduated college and went on to law school and passed the bar and blah, blah, blah. No, none of that's true. I guess the truth of the matter is that he did graduate from college in 2010. That is what he accomplished before he quit. And he had graduated and then he fought Juan Manuel Marquez. And then he applied to law school, which he was accepted. However, he never attended. He started his own trucking company instead with his brother, Jose Diaz. He says, gave up, and Diaz said, I gave it up. I gave up my law school aspirations. I invested money in my company instead of going to law. It turned out to be a good decision. He says, I make plenty of money in the trucking business. I'm not doing this returning to boxing for money. He says, I make more in 1 week worth of invoices than I'll make in my fight. I got 12 drivers and 5 other people in the office. When fighters say they're making a comeback because they don't need the money, guess what? You got it. They need the money. And for this guy to say that he made the right decision to have a trucking company instead of becoming a lawyer, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. I don't know any lawyers that, I don't know any that aren't financially set. I don't know any, even if you're a bad lawyer. You know how they're always saying, oh, well, such and such is a lawyer. He finished 5th in his class. He finished 1st in his class. He finished 3rd in his class. Even the lawyers that finish 40th in their class are making some money. So I don't know. My own father is in the trucking business. And, the bottom line is not that I have anything to do with it, but the bottom line is this. He's done okay, but I'm sure he would be the first to tell you that there's no oodles of money in that. Although there have been, things handed out as a result of that, but not to me. Johnny Gonzalez returns, former two-time division champ. He's going to be fighting April 27th in another one of those Mexico versus, no, not Puerto Rico, Japan fights. April 27th. He's going to be in. Mexico. He's taking on Shahada Hagashi, who's 18-5. Also on that card is female world champ Mariana Juarez, who's 36-6 with 3 knockouts. Man, did she look good in that Playboy layout or what? She's going to be taking on Rayo Togo and some other fights as well, like Dante Yargan. He's going to be taking on Akinori Kanani, who's that's probably one of the best matched fights of the evening. And Ray Vargas, who's an unbeaten super bantamweight prospect, is taking on Seizo Kono for a belt as well. So you got that going on. And some other news. Derek Chisora. A lot of talk has been about Frank Warren, who's seemingly losing his fighters. He lost a bunch of them. Top dog just recently. Ricky Burns has left him. Nathan Cleverly says, I'm not leaving him. I'm staying loyal to my man. Bob Arum was quoted as saying, man, you guys don't write off Frank Warren. You're making a bigger mistake. Well, he doesn't say it like that. He says, you're making a big mistake. Read my lips. I don't care what I said today. It's what I mean tomorrow is what I'm saying yesterday. But anyway, Derek Chisora got approved. The BBBSC, who basically suspended his license indefinitely. Remember? He's suspended indefinitely. Only a year. David Hay, who didn't get suspended for the altercation that those two had, when David Hay, like a bitch, hit Derek Chisora with a bottle. David Hay is a bitch. But he came back and fought Derek Chisora at a unsanctioned by the BBBSC event. The Luxembourg Boxing Commission sanctioned it. And actually was one of David Hay's best performances, even though he is a bitch. But, the bottom line is Derek Chisora got reinstated yesterday officially by the BBBSC. So he will be on that card in April in London. It's taking place April 20th. Nathan Cleverly's the main event. And Derek Chisora will be fighting the Evertough TBA. So we'll see what happens there. I agree with Bob Arum. I certainly wouldn't be writing off Frank Warren at this point. He's been around way too long. Right, Chatty Factory. Oh, he glassed me, man. He glassed me, is what Derek Chisora was saying when they referred to him hitting him with a bottle in his hands. But what a bitch move. I'm sorry, man. What a bitch move. It's something you do when you have no other choice. It's something you do when you're about to get beat up by like 9 guys and all you can grab is a bottle. When you're by yourself and you have a broken leg and, you're in an alley with your back against the wall. And then you grab a bottle and you do what you got to do to save your life. But not in a press conference. Not in something that it probably wasn't even going to come to blows. David Hay, you're a bitch. Really. And I can't stand David Hay. I think that he's a fraud. Really. And why he still is regarded by all the British people, a lot of the British boxing fans, as a component, as a major component in the heavyweight division. I just don't understand how they would align themselves with a guy like him. And he's still demanding that he gets a shot at the Klitschko's. Come on, man, come on. And his trainer Adam Booth has shown that he falls a little short too. But anyway. I'm gonna walk out of the studio and David Hayes is gonna be there. He's gonna go, bitch, huh? Bam, knock me right out, right? Of course he can knock me out. I'm an old man. You know what? B-Hop is almost as old as me, but B-Hop's in a lot better shape. We got some great stuff happening on the show, of course, and I'm real excited about the new show. I don't know about you guys, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time on it. We did get some emails on it, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're living under a rock. But I got some decisions to make over the next couple of weeks, and a lot of them have to do with this show, and where we're going to be, and where we're going to be broadcasting from, or who we're going to be broadcasting for, and all that stuff. I mean, there's some things on the table for us, and it's not all about money and stuff for me. I mentioned loyalty, and I am a loyal guy. And, there's some decisions, and one of them happens to do with the podcasts. And, I value our premium podcast subscribers like no other. I keep it in place for them because 90% of them all think it should be more money and, that I don't charge enough. And we don't really do it, as it's not really a profit, because we don't even make enough money with the cost to do this show on a weekly basis. But we're trying to give the premium podcast subscriber more than your average bear. So, if you've been waiting or contemplating, the bottom line is this. It's $15 a year. And you get the show like Talk to Me, Man, that you can listen to whenever you want. You're going to be getting some other stuff that's going to be added to it. And, you can still watch Talk to Me, Man, and I highly recommend it. I think that you're going to really like it, especially when we open up the phone lines, which we do on every show. You drive the show. If you missed it, you can tune. You could become a premium podcast subscriber and listen to it and see what we're talking about. Or you can go to LDL TV and check it out. But Mondays, 1 p.m. Eastern, Talk to Me, Man. It's our new show. Make sure you tune in right here at BillyCBoxing.com. You can also check it out on Ustream. And if you just look, if you go to Ustream.tv and go to just search Talking Boxing with Billy C., you'll find that channel. But anyway, it's time for the...
Wake up. It's time for the... It's too early for a trivia question.
Today's It's Too Early for a Trivia Question is being brought to us by Gleason's Gym in Brooklyn, New York. Check them out. You can give them a call, 718-797-2872, 718-797-2872. They got locations in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, and Jersey. So check them out. Don't forget about their fantasy camp, August 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and 25th. It's being held at a resort up in the Catskills. Great time last year. I think it's like I know it's more than 10 years that they've been doing it. So actually, I'm not sure how many, but I know it's more than 10. This is a great thing. You regretted not going last year. You get trained by professional trainers, and there's all kinds of celebrities there and everything else. It's a great time for all. You can bring your family, and not only will you participate in several days of true boxing role. You train, you eat like a boxer, you train like a boxer, and then you end up boxing in an event. It's a great time. Dax Khan covered it last year and had a fantastic time. Met a lot of people, and we want to follow you, man. So if you're going to join, if you're going to be man or woman enough to get into this boxing fantasy camp this year, get a hold of Gleason's Gym, 718-797-2872. Sign up for the fantasy camp. Tell them Billy C sent you. Demand a Billy C discount. Or you can go to our website, www.billycboxing.com, and click one of the Gleason's Gym banners. I highly recommend it. It will be a great time for all. And speaking of Gleason's Gym, you have all of their stuff. If you scroll down to the bottom of our front page, you'll see their schedule, which is there. So today's It's Too Early for a Trivia Question is being supplied to us by our very own boxing trivia guru, Henry Haskup. And this is a great question. And I will give you a hint. It was definitely after the fight we talked about today with the Greatest Fight Series. This question took place after the Carmen Basilio-Sugar Ray Robinson first fight. The question is which was the first World Championship fight to use 4 ropes? Which was the first World Championship fight to use 4 ropes? If you know that answer, email me, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. Which was the first World Championship fight to use 4 ropes? Email me, Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com. And if you're the first one, you'll win the prize.
This day in boxing history.
This day in boxing history is being brought to us by Campanaro and Tomkiewicz. That's right. If you're looking for a lawyer, use the ones that keep my ass out of trouble. That is Campanaro and Tomkiewicz. Give them a call today, 845-221-4099. That's 845-221-4099. 845-221-4099. Let Campanero and Tomkovich knock out your legal problem. 845-221-4099. Quick reminder, don't forget about March 29th, ESPN Friday Night Fights up at the Turning Stone Resort and Casino. I'm going to be there ringside. I want to hang out with you. Buy some tickets right now. You can get them from our website, www.billycboxing.com. Click the Friday Night Fight poster, which is right there. You'll go right to the Turning Stone box office, get yourself some tickets, then drop me an email and tell me that you're going to be there. Let's set up a time where we can meet. I'll even let you buy me a scotch or 2 or 9 or 10 or whatever. On this day, March 13th in 2004, Winky Wright wins a 12-round decision over Sugar Shane Mosley to win the World Junior Middleweight title, which was being considered as the World Junior Middleweight title. He also had the WBC title and the WBA title that was added to his own IBF World Junior Middleweight titles. I would say that on this day, March 13th in 2004, Winky Wright was the Junior Middleweight champion, and that fight took place in Las Vegas. That concludes our show for today. I got one more thing to say. Make sure you tune in tomorrow morning, same bad time, same bad channel. Well, there's only one channel, Fight Now channel. Call your local television provider and tell them you want the Fight Now channel added to your sports channel lineup. It's that simple. Pick up the phone and call for all the information about the channel. You can find it on their website, www.fightnow.com. See you all tomorrow, man. Ciao, baby.